What's going on, guys? In this episode, I interviewed Cameron. Not the same Cameron as the audio only episode. This is a different Cameron. When was an Afghanistan soldier and a very philosophical man. I gotta give it to him. That man was crazy. He was blowing my mind. And I think I'm gonna take home the most from this interview is that no matter how much we think we're free, we're really not. And I hope you guys will enjoy this episode. Leah, what did you think of that episode?
Yeah.
Yeah, dope. Today, I'm sitting with Cameron. Cameron, what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Right now, I'm going to school. I lost my. I had a full-time job during COVID, but then I had to go back down to part-time because they couldn't afford to keep me. So right now, I'm using my Army benefits to go back to school. My major is history. Minor is religious studies. Author, podcast creator, spiritual teacher.
Mm-hmm. How would you describe yourself?
Who is yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Who is you? Who is me?
That's a good question. Good question.
If you want me to be honest,
Uh-huh.
if you were asking me who is myself or what is myself, I would say nothing
Mm-hmm.
because it's all made up anyways.
Okay. So, why do you say that? Let's hear it.
Okay, you ready for this?
Yeah, let's get right into
Who
it.
who are you?
Okay. I'm Jacob.
Who's Jacob?
Jacob is me, blah 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 blah. Don't need to get into who I am because this episode's full all about you. But
My point is your
uh
name, right? That's what people want to
yeah,
identify with is my name, or they might say like, "Oh, I'm a teacher, or I'm a doctor," but that's
yeah,
what you are, not who you are. Your
uh-huh.
name. Did you pick it? Did you pick your name?
I didn't pick my name.
Neither did I.
Uh-huh.
So how can that be the real us when we didn't pick any of it?
Yeah, I like that. That's deep. That's deep. No, I like that a lot. That's really cool. So, you got a pretty good story. You're obviously very philosophical. I don't necessarily want to derail the conversation, but I like to start out with like just your background and who you are, you know, who's Cameron, not, deep
Yes.
philosophical who's Cameron.
Yes.
So what was your childhood like?
Childhood was good.
Hmm.
My parents were, human, so they made mistakes. They were trying to get through their life the same way that you and I are.
Yeah.
But they did their best. They did their best, and they gave me what I needed. They provided me with a good home. They got me into school. They taught me right from wrong for the most part. So I can't
Hmm.
complain. I had the right things that I needed to have a good childhood. That's what I would say.
Okay. Were you very philosophical as a child?
No, I
No.
asked questions.
Yeah.
I asked questions and I wanted to know things, but my mind hadn't been quite expanded yet.
Okay. So how did you get onto the path of mind expansion?
So after I was done in the military, I
Hmm.
started having free time. I started having time to think, and I started um, asking myself questions. Right, like one of the primary questions that I was asking myself was, "Why am I so angry all the time?"
Hmm.
Right, like I know I have PTSD, but still, why is something like this so triggering to me? Why is somebody looking at me this way make me want to stab them in the face?
Hmm.
And it led to a series of self-reflective thoughts that brought me to a point of consciousness,
Hmm.
becoming aware of who I was, right? Not who or what I am, who I was, the
Hmm.
conscious thinking being behind the identity. And then it just that continues, right? So once that process happens, it can't stop. It doesn't go backwards. It's like an avalanche. It just builds up speed and momentum and it keeps going.
Totally. I totally know what you mean. I 100% agree with that. I I've definitely done some uh reflection like that too. And once you go in, you can't go back.
Right.
What was your military experience like? I mean, like that must have really at the time defined who you are and made you go onto your path of awakening in a sense. So let's hear your military story.
Yeah. So I started out in 2008, and then in 2010 I went active duty, and I went to my unit, first unit, and I was only there for probably about a year and a half before I went to
Mm-hmm.
Afghanistan. Went to Afghanistan, and I saw some shitty things, had some
Mm-hmm.
shitty things happen to me. Um,
What were some
I
of
write
those
about them in my
things?
book, but
Okay.
one example, yeah, one thing was like in the middle of the night, an Afghan police checkpoint that we were responsible for got attacked, and they had a bunch of casualties. And at the time, my squad was in the middle of nowhere, basically, at an outpost with a special forces team. And we only had one medic for the entire camp, and that medic had just gone on leave the day before this incident happened. So we were faced with a 15-person. It's called in the military we call it a mass casualty situation. And the Afghans, they didn't have a hospital that they could get to, so they needed our help. So they brought all their wounded to us, and myself and a couple other infantry guys and the SF guys. We did our best to try and patch those people up. But that experience is traumatizing, because I'm watching people literally puke on themselves because they're in shock, and pissing on themselves because they're in shock. And I'm doing my best with the very limited understanding of medical training that I have, and I'm trying to do my best to assess and treat these patients. So that was pretty crazy. In the moment when I'm doing it, you don't think about it, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
training kicking in. You don't really think about it until after, or even years later. That's when it comes back to get you.
But like, so maybe I misheard the story, but you were attacking these people and then they
Hmm.
came to your help. Is that
No,
what
no,
you
no, no.
said?
We weren't
Okay.
attacking them. No,
I'm
they were
sorry.
being attacked by. No, no, it's okay. This police checkpoint. They were being attacked, ironically, by other policemen.
Uh-huh.
So not by us, but by their own people. They were getting shot by their own people. Yes.
That's that is intense. I can totally see that, and I can understand you not wanting to share a whole lot of stories since they're in your book, and I totally understand that. But what made you leave the military?
If I'm being honest, I probably really didn't belong in the military. I
Mm-hmm.
had a problem with authority. I didn't like being told what to do all the time. I just didn't think that, you know what I mean? Like everybody
Yeah.
knows that the military is like that, but I just didn't realize. Like I never was able to do what I wanted to do. I couldn't go on vacation when I wanted to go on vacation. I was there were times I got in trouble for literally things that weren't my fault. I had, terrible bosses, like leadership, that tried to get me in trouble for things that again weren't my fault, and tried to ruin my career. And I'm just like, I don't need this, like I joined to do a good thing. I joined to be, a GI Joe, to go serve my country, and I did that. And at the time, things were wrapping up in the Middle East, and I didn't think we were going anywhere anymore. So I'm like, my purpose is done. I'm getting out. I don't want to do
Mm-hmm.
this anymore.
Yeah, I feel that this is somewhat of a dumb question, but it's not. It's how do you feel about the current state of Afghanistan right now? I mean, after being through so much and then seeing, I'm sure you've seen some of your friends died and know people have died at least, and seeing that we've pretty much given up. How has that affected you and your PTSD?
At this point in my life, my PTSD is pretty under control.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that I'm not disappointed. I'm
Mm-hmm.
very disappointed. At this stage in my life, I don't believe that any war is necessary. War is not necessary,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. But it's the kind of that concept, you've heard that concept, like you want to make it better than when you got there, and
Yeah.
that's, like we didn't really do that. We made it worse. Like it
Yeah.
was bad when we got there, and then we made it worse and then left.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not great. And I'm laughing and I'm making light of it, but Lots of people died on both
Mm-hmm.
sides. Lots of innocent people died, civilians, children. We can't take that back. We should learn from it. We should fix our mistakes and make decisions and legislation moving forward that keeps us from doing that again.
What how do we get to that point? How do we move
Mm.
forward from that?
We got to do a lot of things that people are not ready for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have to learn compassion, not just between you and me, but between governments. We need to stop being selfish and greedy.
Yeah.
Um, we gotta learn forgiveness, right? We need to not hold grudges again against people between like you and me,
Yeah.
and then even more so between other countries. And it's not our business. It's not our business. We're not the world police. We don't need to be kicking in other people's doors and other people's countries. Like we've got drones. If you're really worried about somebody doing a terrorist attack somewhere, we've got drones. Take out this place or whatever it is. Take out individual is responsible. You don't need to invade a whole country to take out a couple of bad actors.
Totally. I like that. That's a good way of saying it. What made you want to join the military in the first place? What was your adolescent years like leading up to the military?
Well, most of the male members of my family were in the military, so that was
Mm-hmm.
a start, right? I wanted to be like them. I looked up to them, but then 9/11 happened. 9/11 happened, and I was still pretty young when that happened. But even then, I knew that I wanted to do something about it. I wanted to be a part of um, the payback, right? That's how
Yeah.
I thought back then, because I wanted payback um, for these people responsible. I learned differently, right? We know things now. We know that certain things probably didn't happen the way that they were portrayed to us. Um, and I've seen those people firsthand. They're poor people. A lot of them can't even read or write in their own language, let alone be capable of plotting some, nefarious attack on our country. It's just sad. We're
Mm-hmm.
literally invading a country full of poor people, poor farmers and peasants that are just trying to protect themselves, let alone, doing all these crazy things that we're accusing them of doing. And I saw it firsthand. I'm like walking down the street looking for bad guys, but I'm watching children picking up cans of soda off the gutter, in the streets in the dirt and trying to get the last little droplets of soda out of the can. It
Mm-hmm.
was sad. But I joined because I wanted to do the right thing, to put it simply.
Yeah. No, I love it. Uh, I totally agree with what you're saying because it's just like when I talk to people around me right now, like where I live, a lot of people are like, "Oh man, the Taliban is all big and scary," and like, yes, it's a threat, but like 9/11 wasn't solely the Taliban; it was Al Qaeda, And I'm not the most educated person on this, so I could be totally wrong, but it's not like it's like exactly what you said. It's not like these people are scheming to destroy the world. Most of them are poor farmers that are just trying to survive. In a sense, so are we.
Yes. We're not going to solve any of the world's problems with more violence.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to solve problems by going to poor countries and kicking in their doors. The little that they have, we go there and destroy it. Like now we just look like huge bullies. We're just picking on people. And unfortunately, I witnessed it with my own eyes, and
Mm-hmm.
back then I was a different person. I was, we're talking about personalities and who am I? Who is this? Back then I was pretending to be a GI. That's what I was doing then. And so that persona, that identity that I was being, that required me to be violent and it required me to not think about those people. But now in my awakened state of mind, I see everything for how it is in truth, not in truth capital T instead of truth little t, which is like you get to know some of the truth, not the whole truth.
Mm-hmm. What was that first breaking point in the military for you? Like that first sense of the mask of being GI Joe fell off and you're back to being a human and you realize like what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, I actually remember that quite clearly. I re-enlisted for 4 more years, and I was going to go to another duty station, and it was the most bizarre thing. The very next day, I woke up and I just like had this weird thought. I just like reflected, and I was like, "Oh my God! Like I don't like the army anymore. I don't want to do this. But I had literally
Yeah.
just the day before re-enlisted for 4 more years. And I was like, I fucked myself. It was too late then, but I did. It was the day after I re-enlisted.
Wow. That was those 4 years must have been pretty hard then.
They were.
What did you do right after the military?
So back then, after I took off my identity of being I was taking on a new identity, being a
Hmm.
bodybuilder. So I was doing steroids and being massive and lifting weights and trying to do competitions and stuff like that. Um, and I was working at a gym before the podcast and the book and all the other things. So I was pretending to be a bodybuilder then after the military.
Hmm. How come?
The true answer is that I was building a facade. I was trying to protect my subconscious mind.
Hmm.
By being big and intimidating, I thrived in the military. When I
Hmm.
was big and intimidating and on steroids, people didn't talk to me or mess with me. And that protected me because I was really hurting inside and I just didn't know how to acknowledge it or handle it. And then when getting out of the military, it was the same thing. I didn't want people to talk to me. I didn't want people to be around. The bigger and more dating I was, the less likely people were to talk to me or to try and challenge me in some way. That's the
Yeah,
truth.
totally. Were you bullied as a kid?
Yeah. Yeah. Not some people have a way for sure, but
Hmm.
yes, I wasn't like a popular kid. I didn't fit in with most people. I had a very tight knit group of friends. Yeah,
Hmm.
I was. And then I was bullied in the military too.
Really? How?
When you come in, you're a private, you're a nobody. You're
Hmm.
not a high rank. Nobody respects you. Nobody cares about you. Um, and a lot of people in the military, man, they're not there for the same reasons. Some people are there like me that are trying to be patriotic and do the right thing. Not everybody else is there for the same reasons, man.
Yeah.
Some people are for college. Some people are there because they dropped out of high school and they don't have anything else. Some people are trying to get away from a bad past life and they just don't, they need order. They need somebody to tell them what to do. And unfortunately, that kind of pool of people outnumbers the people who are trying to be quote unquote patriotic. So for me,
Hmm.
when I came in, I looked like a kiss ass. Everybody thought I was a brown nose and just trying to get ahead. I was trying to get ahead, but I was just trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
While everybody else was getting drunk every single day and getting into fights and, doing drugs low key and then faking their piss test so that they didn't get caught. Like I'm like studying the manuals. I'm like trying to learn. I'm trying to ask questions. So I just didn't fit in. That was the
Hmm.
problem until I had combat experience and then I started doing steroids. Then nobody messed with me. I was my own person. And then I became the bully.
Hmm. What is it like to be like in the combat zone, boots on the ground, gun in the air? Like, what is that mind state like?
Mm. I mean, anytime you watch a movie, you're pretty much getting a glimpse of it, right? Because what you're asking is, what does it feel like? I don't
Yeah.
know because I wasn't a self-conscious being then.
Hmm.
I wasn't afraid because I was trained to not be afraid. I was trained to look for bad guys and kill them.
Hmm.
But at times, as a bad guy, they all are dressing like civilians. So that means man, woman, children, they're all bad guys. You got to look at everybody like they're a bad guy. So day to day, it's not like you're in combat 100% of the time, right? You're in a combat zone, but honestly, 90% of it is being bored and trying not to go crazy dealing with your thoughts because there's just nothing going on. And that's almost worse because at least when something's going on, you know where the enemy is, you know what's going on, and you can react and defend yourself. When nothing's going on, you're wondering, like, what are they doing? Why is it taking so long for them to attack us, right? Like, why aren't they coming after us? Where are they hiding? What are they thinking
Hmm.
about? And the other million things that you think, anytime a door slams too hard, you're like, oh man, is it go time? Is it ready? Um, so yeah, it sucks. It's like being trapped, it was like being trapped is what I felt like. I'm in this little outpost in the middle of the desert and we're surrounded by Afghans and, whether they're police or army or civilians. But we're basically trapped in this big desert desert biome surrounded by big mountains in every direction, and you can't really leave. You can't go anywhere, so you
Mm-hmm.
can't go to the store to go get stuff. You can't, you know go to the strip club or whatever. Like, there's nowhere to go. You're just
Mm-hmm.
stuck in this one little place
Yeah,
forever.
totally. Ah, that's interesting. Like I never thought of that. I've never thought about the time in between action and non-action. You're just sitting there bored, but like, not you're just like exactly your mind is your thoughts are just racing. Your thoughts are just all over the place. Um, how did you keep yourself from going crazy? Like, did you have any techniques? Any like
Honestly,
Sudoku puzzles?
everybody did go crazy.
Uh-huh.
They're just not brave enough to admit it.
Mm-hmm.
I saw people talking to themselves sometimes. I mean, even me, man. I had moments where I almost did some really unforgiving things because I just was my roommate was screaming, because it's complicated, but he was trying to go home and he was having problems with his wife, and
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't working out, and he's in the room next to me saying, "I'm gonna fucking kill everybody," like, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"You cool, dude?" He's like, "No, I'm not fucking cool," just everybody just did. They lost their, you just, you're day in, day out, you're trying to fight the boredom, and you do things, we had oh my God, that makes me remember, actually, we had a medic. He really did lose his shit, but I think he was already crazy before we even got out there. We had a bobcat, so like a tiny little deal. It has like a scoop so you can dig or pick up
Yeah.
pallets. Homeboy, when we're out there from sun up to sundown, he was digging holes with the bobcat for
Okay.
days, days and days and days, just digging holes and then filling them back up.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, he was a psychopath. He was
Yeah.
crazy.
Like, I think that's interesting to hear because I feel like media portrays craziness in somewhat of a realistic way for some people, but like that's crazy.
Yes.
That's true borderline insane to do that. And I don't think you really see that in movies. And I
No.
could be wrong, but
No, I mean, because that idea is terrifying, right? There,
yeah.
there is a significant difference, and I'm glad you bring this up, because like that kind of behavior is, yes, it's like a break. Um, a lot of people that we deem as crazy, are they really crazy, or are they just free?
Mm, okay. Yes,
Because
I've had
what is
that thought
crazy, right?
before. Yeah.
Like, is somebody who doesn't follow rules and laws crazy just because they don't follow rules and laws, or do they just not give a fuck about rules and laws because they don't exist, so they do whatever they want?
No, I love that concept. I've definitely thought of that before. And the perfect example of that concept is the Truman Show, right? Have you ever seen the
Mm,
Truman Show?
yes,
That's the
you're living it.
perfect exactly. That's the perfect example of that life or that example or that scenario is what if you were to, not go to work, you go down the highway to the city over when you're supposed to be at work. What would happen? That's living truly free is being in the present moment and whatever like thought comes in, that's what you do. You don't even question it. You just do it.
Yes.
Is that how you're living your life right now?
Mm, I wish. But
Uh-huh.
even though that is freedom, we still have society, right?
Mhm.
Even though what I just said makes the most sense logically,
Mhm.
until everybody's doing it, I got to keep pretending. I got to keep playing my role and doing my thing.
Mhm.
Um, it's not as easy as people like to think. Now, you could just be homeless and just not give a fuck about anything and just go do whatever you want, but then you don't have health care, right? Then, you don't have money to pay for stuff. And so then you got to, so like, yes, it's possible. You can do it, but is it really living? Like, are you
Mhm.
really, it's still that, even that is still not true freedom, because you're not like, you're free basically to survive, and not to thrive. Right now, I'm thriving. I'm in a house, I have a job, I'm going to school, I've got a family. Those things are good, but it could be better because we'd be free and we
Mhm.
could figure out a way to stop doing things in this ridiculous narcissistic that we continue to think. But for now, we got to abide by the rules of society until other people figure it out.
Hmm. I love it. I'm just trying to think of how to rebuttal, like how to just keep going with that. Let's share some of your insights that you have. You're a spiritual guru. What was your awakening? When did you become awakened as a spiritual guru?
So I started meditating,
Hmm.
and I had an out of body experience that I can't explain.
Okay.
I closed my eyes and I'm meditating, so I'm still here in my body and doing this thing. And then the next thing I know, I'm not. I'm somewhere else.
Hmm.
I'm in this other place, and there's this blue Hindu god looking being, and I'm looking at it and it's looking at me, and I'm like, what the fuck? What's going on? And then it kisses me on the forehead and said, everything is going to be okay. And then the ceiling above me turned into this bright, white, brilliant light.
Hmm.
And then I just came back into consciousness. But then ever since then, I was never the same. I
Hmm.
had this deep understanding of the universe and just human beings in general that I can't explain. I can't explain where it comes from. You
Hmm.
could ask me whatever question you want, and I would find a way to answer it because I have this place where I can go there to get these answers. Um, but that's it, I mean, and then I pursued it. I knew something was different. I knew something had changed. So I wanted to understand it better. So I started reading. All the books on spirituality and religion and philosophy I could. And piece by piece, I've been trying to make sense of it all. And
Hmm.
to me, I have a way of making sense of it. But the reality is the questions that we all want to have answered. It's like you want some wisdom, you want some philosophy.
Hmm.
Think about it this way. Imagine you're playing a VR game. You have the headset on. It's like a complete virtual experience, right? You got gloves on, you got your booties on, and you're able to walk around and play the game. When things are happening in the game, you don't know why they're happening. And you can't understand it because you're playing the game. You're doing the thing. The only way to understand why the game is doing what it's doing, or why the creator of the game put that there, is to take the headset off and to ask the creator to look at the coding of the game to understand. But as long as you're in the game, you won't understand why it's happening that way.
Hmm. I like that. That's good. That's good. I get it. I totally understand. I definitely have had experience like that before. To me, I've said this a lot, but the best on my podcast, but to share it with you, and I'm sure you've heard this before, um, it's like we live in a simulation, but I don't like the thoughts that come with the idea of a simulation, because when you hear that, you think of like technology as a computer or a phone, but that's just because that's what's in our present, society. That's what's big right now is technology. In 1,000 years from now, it will still feel like a simulation, but we will be able to relate it to whatever's new. Versus right now, we relate technology. 1,000 years ago, we related it to I forget what religion it is, but it's like a giant guy that floats in the universe and he's dreaming, and we're his dream.
Mm.
Um, that's what they thought the simulation was someone dreaming. But then, we evolved to now. Now we think it's technology. 1,000 years will evolve, and maybe we can link it to like psychedelics or some whatever it is. Marshmallows are the key to the universe.
Yeah. Or maybe we won't, because again, we're still playing the game. We still have the VR headset on.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, think about this, right? Scientists, physicists, they can't accurately draw the fourth dimension properly because we're in the third dimension, right?
Yeah.
So now if you take that same concept about drawing it, right? This is just the simple concept of drawing the fourth dimension. What if ideas and concepts in the fourth dimension are in a different place and we can't understand them because we're in the third dimension? So what if, there's beings that exist in the fourth dimension or the fifth dimension that completely understand our existence because they're in a different place than us, but as long as we're here, we can't understand it.
I like that. That's true. Because we can understand like 2D objects, their sole purpose is to exist in our 3D plane. But to them, maybe their whole life is totally different than ours. You know,
Right.
they could have consciousness. You know, my desk right here could have consciousness, but it's in the 2D plane, and I will never be able to know.
That's right.
So let's go back to where we started. I liked where we were. I just wanted to I like to do the format, you know. What are like break down what it means to you of dissolving your ego, you know, dissolving Cameron.
Yeah. Wonderful question. First, you have to, it's kind of like that question I asked you at the beginning, right? Like, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
I'm Cameron, right? Like, everybody wants to do that. Everybody, when I ask people that question, they try to say, like, well, I'm, a nurse and I like to work out. And it's always the same thing. I say, not what are you? Who are you? Well, I'm me. Well, who's me? Take that. The point of that questioning is to get them to come back to the place that's underneath their personality, right? What is underneath personality, right? What would you be if you didn't have language?
I've thought about that. Yeah.
Would you have thought? Because you're thinking with language, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even now, as you're trying to figure out what I'm saying, you're using words to do that. But what if you didn't have that? You just be emotion.
Yeah. Totally. You'd just be I always thought that'd be a great scientific test if we could, which it'd be very illegal. But you get a baby at right at birth, you put a baby in a room full of darkness and nothing, and somehow it's able to be fed and nurtured, but it doesn't taste anything, right? It's just in pure nothingness for that first 18 years of its life, and then you let it out, and then what would happen? Would it be conscious, right? Would it have a personality? It would be a complete blank of the most developmental years of our lives. It would be blank for it. So what would it truly be? It would, the philosophical answer we would all hope is it would still be pure consciousness in a form, right?
What you're talking about is consciousness versus intellectuality. Conscious doesn't mean that you have the ability to speak. Conscious doesn't mean that you even can function in the same way that you and I are. There's probably different levels of consciousness, but what we're talking about as far as communication and eating and sensory and all these things, that's intellect. Sensory responses to physical touch, taste, sound, and sight, smell, those are all part of your mind, your brain, which is like a sponge trying to constantly soak up data, right? It's like AI, really. I mean, it's organic AI, your brain and your mind to operate that way because it wants, how do we learn, right? From the moment you're born, you're learning through experience, and all of these experiences, that's what makes who you are, right? Mm-hmm. You ask anybody, what's your favorite color? Red. Why? I've just always liked red, right? The probable answer is that they had some connection to the color red in their early years, right? They probably had something that connected with them. They saw a fire truck at some point, or they had red fingernail polish that just really stuck with them, and that's why they like the color red. Or they like pizza, right? Well, why do they like pizza? Because that person in their family every Friday night since they were 5 years old had pizza every night. It's not complicated. We like to think that we're very individualistic and that we have all these things that make us so special, but they're all imaginary. All of it.
Mm-hmm. I love it, dude. I love it. I love everything you're talking about. What are you studying in college? You should become a teacher.
Yes, I am. The goal right now is I'm getting my bachelor's in history to be a history teacher, but I think what I'm going to end up doing is getting a master's in religious studies and then being a professor for religious studies.
Religious studies? That's interesting. You don't strike me as a religious person. You strike me as a philosophical person. So what's up with that?
Yes, I'd say both. Here's the thing. Religion, imagine you're on one side of a river, right? And you want to get to the other side of the river. You want to get to the land that's on the other side of the river. How do you do that? You have to have a boat. Religion is a boat. Religion helps you get to the other side. But once you get to the other side, you don't need the boat anymore. Religion has very beautiful concepts. And all of the things that I'm talking about as far as philosophy and these concepts about who we are and identity, a lot of those are depicted in Eastern philosophies or religions like Zen and Buddhism, the Tao, the Tao Te Ching and the I Ching, all of those things. If you go back Confucius, if you go back far enough, you can see in the Hindu cultures too, right? I mean, they knew what they were talking about. All of the things I'm talking about come from that place at some point. Now, it's hard because what we identify with religion is this thing of worship, is this thing of like, if I do this, I'm going to heaven or hell. That's where the problem is. I don't want to take that away from anyone, because whatever makes you happy in this world, whatever gets you through the day, that's what you should do. And it all has beauty. It's all poetry, right? Just like when you see a beautiful sunset or a beautiful sunrise on the beach, it's poetry. It's beauty. It gives color to life. And so do all of these religions. They can teach us something if we let it.
That was beautiful. I love it. I forgot I had it. Hang on. Oh, so do you believe in, like, I have like questions I ask, and one of them is after death, but I haven't asked you those yet. So, but do you believe in heaven or hell?
No, not the way that you're
Mm-hmm.
probably meaning, right? Like not the typical Christian way of heaven and hell. I think the heaven and hell that is often referred to in biblical texts is a state of mind. I
Mm-hmm.
think when you're happy and when you're living a good life and you're a good person, you're in heaven, right? Life is good then. But when
Mm-hmm.
you're an angry, spiteful, evil person, your life is hell, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why it, and now take that concept. This is exactly what karma is.
Mm-hmm.
All these religions, all of these concepts, they have a place where they come together. We all think that these religions are so very different, but they're not, man. They all have some part of them that come from somewhere at the very beginning. They all have an origination point. And the point of it all is that what are you doing in this life, right? What are you doing with this life that you have, that you're living right now? Are you being a good person and forgiving others for what they're doing and trying to live your best life? Or are you an evil piece of shit that's murdering people and, robbing people? And if you're living like that, it's guaranteed your life isn't good, right? It's not good, because you get whatever you give out to the world, it comes back to you. That's karma. But in the very sense of what I'm talking about, this heaven and hell idea, it all is the same. It all matters. What you're doing here and now is going to reflect heaven or hell. What is happening throughout the time of your life, from beginning to death, that is karma. And whether or not there's more lives, like whether you die and there's another life after that or not, you don't know. Nobody really does. People have ideas, people have philosophies about it, but nobody really knows for sure until you die. But even if that's true, even if you've come back 1,000 times, you don't remember it. So there's something about that whole process. It's not for us to know. And I think that if we did know, it would only complicate things, and it would ruin the beauty of this life.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. I totally agree with that. I was going to ask you, why do you think we don't know? But you pretty much just answered it. It's like, if we knew that, like, if like we were born and God was like, all right, champ, I'll see you when you die. Heaven's going to be great. It's like, what'd be the point of living? This place fucking
Yeah.
sucks, right?
Yes, it does.
This reality is, this is a saying I like to say whenever like someone's complaining to me at my job or whatever. It's just, life's a bitch, then you die, because it's true. But it's how you perceive that level of bitch, however you perceive your life, that's what it is. I totally believe that you can either,
Yes.
if you stare at all the negatives and ignore the positives, then your life is hell. But if you accept all the positives and live with the negatives, then your life is heaven.
Yes.
Uh,
And a simpler concept of somebody who's much wiser than me went by the name of Buddha. And he said once, what you think you become.
mm-hmm. Totally.
Your thoughts dictate reality. Every person you encounter Whatever you believe about them is a projection of yourself, right? Think about
Mm.
this concept. When you meet another person, right, and you don't know them, right, you're assuming everything you know about them from first instance is assumed based on how they look, based on the first couple of words they have with you, what kind of like car they drive. It's all projection. You're projecting your thoughts and your judgments on them when you don't even know them. But even if you do know them, even if you think you know them inside and out, how many people do you know that have lied to you or are narcissists and they're pretending to be somebody?
That's a good point. That's a really good point. I love that. That's a very good point. And what you said about projecting yourself is so true. I've never really thought of that. I do that. But like with that, do you think we should be able to have judgment towards people? Because judgment to me is our instincts, you know. It's what we were born back in the caveman times to do. Is there's three bushes and the middle bush has a tiger in it, so I'm going to judge these three bushes on how they look, and I'm going to go to the left or right one because that middle bush looks kind of ugly, you know. And since we don't have to do that anymore, we start to do that in our modern day society, right? It's kind of leftover code, you could say. What would you
Sure.
say?
Yeah. And I think that everything you just said is accurate. I think
Mm-hmm.
the point is to evolve past that, because I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's been our problem for all of these, thousands, millions of years. Whenever we began to have consciousness, this level of consciousness that we possess now, whenever that happened, you're right. They were picking bushes to survive, right? But you know what's something interesting about those three bushes? One of them's got the tiger in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're assuming that you're going to make a right decision. You're
Mm.
assuming that you can make a decision that's going to keep you from dying,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not up to you. Even if
That's
you make the
true.
best decision, sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes you make a choice that ends up killing you anyways. So how do we take that concept and evolve from it, right? By accepting that death is inevitable, by
Mm-hmm.
accepting that we all get sick, we all die, and we all experience pain and suffering. That doesn't make life fancy or fun, but what it means is that you can take the pressure off, right? Relax a little, let yourself hang out there, because at any moment you could die. At any moment you could become sick. At any moment you can experience pain. And why dwell on it? Do
Mm-hmm.
something else. Have fun with it.
Totally. So do you think this is kind of random? Like it's totally related, but I'm just curious because I've been thinking about it. Like, since we all die, like, do you think you should just smoke cigarettes anyways? Like, do you think you should try to live a happy and whole, like a happy, healthy? Okay, ignore happy. I should not have said that. Do you think you should try to live a super healthy life, work out, eat the kale salad when you die eventually, no matter what?
I see, and this is why I love some things in religion, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a really good thing that Jesus said in the Gospel of Thomas, and he said, "Do not do what you hate." Simple as
Mm-hmm.
that. Do not do. When the people around him, where they were asking him, it's like, how should we fast? How should we pray? Should we diet? All these things. And he said, do not do what you hate. And so for me, what that means, because there's two realities, right? You die and you either go somewhere or you don't, or you come back and you just don't remember. You don't know that you come back.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, clearly it's short. Even if you live to be 80, that's still never enough. So eat your damn ice cream. Go see a sunset and eat a pizza. Now, I'm never going to encourage people to do bodily harm to themselves, but man, this world has so much suffering. Why add more to it by restricting yourself from something you want to do? As long as it's not hurting other people, as long as you're not killing other people or causing them physical pain or discomfort, I think that we should all be entitled to a little bit of selfishness.
Mm-hmm. See that that's interesting you say that though, because if you think about it, selfishness is the main cause, at least for America. Selfishness and greed is the like the first cause of all of our problems in America. Right? So Like we all know that, but yet we're still selfish to the fact that we should be selfish.
Primarily because people don't understand what's actually happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people in America that don't realize what you just said there.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people who do realize it, but what can they do about it?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that's tried Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Jesus, what happens to them? They get murdered. So I'm not saying don't do anything about it. If you want to, do what inspires you. You know, if you want to change the world and if you want to find a way to bring about change so that there's no more hunger in the world or there's no more homelessness, more power to you. And I would support anybody that wants to do that if that's your life path and if that's truly what makes you happy. But again, let's go back a little bit. What did I say? That there's always three things in this world that we're going to experience. That is pain, illness, death.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. There's many cruelties in this world, in this country specifically. But we've also experienced this for the, thousands and thousands of years. We've been pretending to be these humans and living in societies. And that, the hunger, the poverty, the homelessness, that's been a part of the game ever since. So what do we do about it? We have to evolve. We have to have these kinds of conversations. People need to expand their minds. Stop putting your head in the sand and ignoring the problems of the world. Let's use a fun analogy here. It's like the Matrix. Everybody is plugged into the Matrix right now, and they're too busy working and too busy going to school, and they're too tired to do anything about it or to even notice that that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting you bring up the Matrix. I just watched that for the first time last weekend. I love that. That's such a good concept. If we could talk about that for a minute, that it blew my mind because I didn't know that's what the Matrix was about. I thought it was just about super cool special agents that are they can morph reality because they're so smart. But that scene is so powerful because it is true. You one day, hopefully, you wake up, and when you wake up, you look around, and you're just, what the fuck? What am I doing with my life? Where am I? I'm literally getting fed all of this information. I'm never questioning authority or questioning just anything. It doesn't have to be authority, but just I'm never questioning. I'm never wondering if this is true or not. I'm just letting it just be shoved down my throat, And then society, once they realize that, like you said with Martin Luther King, with Gandhi, you're dead, I love that scene. It's really good. I'm glad you brought that up.
Think about it. In the movie, we're talking about machines and people are in these bathtubs, right? But what is this a metaphor, right? What do we call the government? We call it the machine, right?
Yeah.
So the machines are an analogy or a euphemism for our government. And they're not wrong. We are being used as batteries because we pay taxes, because we buy things, because we keep consuming. We're feeding the machine. If you stop paying your taxes, if you stop going to and buying shit on Amazon, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to stop being able to work the same way they've been working for all this time.
No, totally. How would you like to see the world end? It's not really related, but I'm kind of curious. How would you like to see the world end?
I don't know that it can.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I'm glad you brought that up because then this is going to take me to a really fascinating concept.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready for this?
I'm so ready. I gotta let me give you a compliment real quick. I love it. You're a great talker. I'm totally gonna listen to your podcast. I'm fascinated.
Thank you. Good. I appreciate that. My job is what I want to do. I want to help people have this kind of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But as we continue, I want you to think about something. Is there anywhere in existence, anywhere in your room or in space or in the universe, is there anywhere where nothing exists?
Mm-hmm. Well, to go in with you, you can't imagine nothing because at the end of the day, it's either white or black, right? It's never truly nothing.
There's no such thing as nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't exist. Even if I hold out my hand and I'm like, there's nothing, there's still air, there's particles, there's atoms, there's molecules, There's probably bacteria in my breath as I'm breathing in and out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Carbon, oxygen. There's no such thing as nothing. So this idea of the Big Bang and all of this coming from nothing, how is that possible?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get something from nothing?
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, then that means this has always existed and it always will
Yes.
exist. So there is no beginning.
Yes. I've tried I tried to explain this on a previous episode and I bombed horribly, so maybe you can do a better job than me. Um it's like about the time, it's about time, right? A timeline. I'll try to explain it and then hopefully you can make it sound better. Like imagine this is time, right? Here's the Big Bang, here's where we are, here's the end of time. As like our ticker or the tick, right? As like in a movie, right? As that cursor starts to move through time, oh, here we are, oh, we died. Now the universe ends and then nothing exists. Like everything's done, nothing, blah, blah, blah. And then there's just nothing for all eternity. How can this be happening now? Because if there's a point in time where nothing exists, then nothing would ever exist in the first place. I think that was a better explanation than I did previously.
You said it beautifully. Our problem is you're measuring time like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is time? Who invented time?
Yeah. You can't measure time, really.
You can't measure time. The only time that time actually really matters is when you're in space, and that's, again, it's relative, right? Like the time and space when you're here between Mars, it's only relative to people on Mars. It's not relative to the person traveling in space.
Mm-hmm.
You ever notice that? Think about the movie Interstellar, right? Matthew McConaughey is out there doing his thing, but when he comes back, he's still the same age because it's only relative to Earth. It's only relative to the people living on Earth. It's not relative when you're out in space doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not a scientist, so it's a little bit harder for me. But again, science is witchcraft. It's a bunch of smart people that think they know what they're talking about, that keep making up ideas, and they collectively agree, well, yes, this makes sense. But in the grand scheme of things, it's just like everything else. We have language, therefore it exists. But if language didn't exist, none of those concepts would exist either. It'd all be witchcraft. My point is, how do we measure time? By Earth and how it's revolving around the sun, right? By what side of the Earth is facing the sun or facing away from the sun. But have you ever experienced tomorrow truly? Or have you ever experienced yesterday? Or has it always been right now?
Yeah. No, you're totally right. I love it. I love it so much. I love Matthew McConaughey. He's definitely on my my man crushes. I have to say that. He's got a sexy voice for sure. But the subjectiveness of time is so true, even us right now, not you and me, but like I think one of the my core beliefs that I don't follow but I believe in is that the key to life, the 100% key to life is never staying in your comfort zone. Like maybe for a little bit, maybe, soak it up, smell the air a little bit, smell the roses. But when you start to stay in your comfort zone for too long, life just goes like that, gone. Because, I saw a Vsauce video that explained this, and he didn't come up with it. Whoever came up with it, it's just not me. That's what I'm trying to say. But here's your life. Let's use my phone again. Do I have a pen? I'll use this remote right here. Here's your life when you're young, when you're one, right? Your whole subjective time of life, right? And then once you turn 2, the time you've been alive has been to like half, right? And then once you become 3, it goes into this amount because this was your relativeness of time. And then you broke it into a half of your time, and then you broke into a third, and then a fourth, and then a fifth. And on a bigger scale, it's more grandiose. But once you become into your 20s and your 30s, when everything is the same because when you're young, when you're 1, 2, and 3, 4, you're learning so much. You're getting out of your comfort zone so much. But once we get older, we start to build our comfort zones up. You never experience anything new, that those years are just so small because nothing happens in between those years. Did that make sense? Was that good?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean it's all good in it, but again, I have to put in that it's all relative.
Uh-huh.
Because you don't perceive time that way, right? You don't, it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like you've lived for however many years. Like for me, I'm 30, right? It doesn't feel like I've lived 30 years, right? Because again, the idea of days, months, weeks, this thing, blah, 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 it's nonsense.
Yeah.
It's a good way to measure things, right? And why we did that so that we could be better farmers and shit. And what does it really matter now? Now we
Mm-hmm.
use it to make sure that you go to work and that you work 40 hours a week at a job you don't like, and go to school to get stuff that you don't want. And, you know, but why do you think most people like staying up late at night playing video games instead of being up during the day? Because it's not relative. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Uh-huh. I was going to say it goes back into being free, not worrying about what's tomorrow, not worrying about what am I doing to my body because I'm doing this, blah, 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 blah. You're just truly free. That is totally the key to life right there, just being free.
What do you think it would look like if you stopped worrying about getting 8 hours of sleep a night and only going to sleep when you felt like you needed to?
I'd probably wouldn't get that much sleep.
Do you need that much sleep?
I actually, if you're asking me personally, I really don't sleep that much, to be honest. Sometimes I sleep 8 hours, sometimes I sleep 6, sometimes I'll sleep 4. I really just don't need that much sleep.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
Most people don't. I mean, these days I'm getting older, so like, yeah, I sleep. But when I was in the army and stuff like that, I could go off of 2 hours of sleep. I've done incredible things with no sleep. It's marvelous. Now, to be clear, like I'm not saying that people can't survive without sleep. I'm just saying I think we can survive with much less sleep than we are accustomed to.
Mm-hmm. Well, back in the Roman times, and Van Gogh, Van Gogh would only sleep for like 2 hours, and then he'd be up for 4, and then he'd sleep for another 2 hours, and then he'd be up for 4. And people in ancient Rome would do the same thing. And yeah, I do agree with you. I don't think, like, sleep is very important. At the same time, it really is important. And I think dreams are really important too, but you're right though. We don't need that much sleep.
Indeed.
What do you think? What do you think dreams are all about?
Another good question.
Mm-hmm.
There's different schools of thought on this. When you look at like ancient cultures, like the Hopi Indians and really any Native American tribe, they use dreams as like messages, almost like prophetic visions and stuff like that. And if you keep track of your dreams, sometimes you do get some pretty interesting things. That's why people are able to read your dreams, right? Like how many things have you seen on the internet or people that can read your dreams and tell you what you're going to get from it? I think it's a mixture of that and also your subconscious, right? Like if you're thinking about something before going to bed and then you have a dream of it, that's probably shouldn't be a surprise. But there are times you have dreams that are mystical, that are prophetic, and you're like, wow, I wonder why I was dreaming about that.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably a reason, but I think it's a mixture of both. I think that there is a level, because again, it's the same concept with like psychedelics, right? Psychedelics take you to a place where you're not. They alter your state of mind. They alter the way that you can perceive this thing that you're doing right now, right? It's just like other dimensions, right? I was having a conversation with somebody about this who says, we like to think of other dimensions as somewhere away, but who says that? Who says that other dimensions don't exist right here, right now? You can't see them with your eye the way that you do. Who says that psychedelics don't change that? Maybe psychedelics alter the way that your brain perceives light into your eyes, and it makes it easier to see different dimensions. Mm-hmm. Who says, like there's this concept in spiritual stuff, like groups where people believe in this concept of the higher self, that there's a version of you somewhere else that is influencing your life or trying to get you on the right spiritual path. Who says that that's not you in another dimension, right here, right now, and can see you the way that you are because they are in a different dimension, perceiving you, and they're influencing you in some way. And you can't perceive them because you're right here, right now. We can perceive the second and first dimension because we do it with drawings and artwork and stuff like that. It's very easy to go this way, but it's not so easy to go this way.
Mm-hmm. I would even say that we can. I like that concept a lot. I really do. You can. I would say that you and me affect other us's in a different dimension as well, right? When we think negative thoughts or we think bad thoughts or whatever, and nothing happens, maybe that thought gets transferred to another dimension, and then that version of us does it, and that's when we in our head of the TV in our head, maybe that's a window into a different dimension, and we saw what it was like if we would have killed that guy because he cut us off in traffic, or we would have asked that girl on a date but we didn't because we were too much of a pussy, right? But it goes back to what you're saying. Who says that, right? Who knows? Who came up with the idea that we couldn't do that?
That's right.
I am on board with the fact that I think I don't know, whatever happened in our lives way back in time messed up our development of the brain and the ego and consciousness itself. I think something happened where we derailed that pun intended of what is it called, train of thought, right, about our thoughts. And now we're getting back. Now we're having a renaissance of that train of thought train. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I just think that our brain is so powerful, and our consciousness obviously is the most important thing in the whole realm of consciousness. I just think that we're on a renaissance of figuring that out again, or at least
I agree with
putting
you.
the right foot in the direction.
Some call it the Great Awakening.
Yeah, I like that. The Great Awakening. It's true though. I mean, I think the first steps was during the 60s with the psychedelic and hippie movement. I've personally done psychedelics, and a lot of the things you were saying earlier, and I realized on psychedelics, like the fucking I know everything about the universe. We're all gonna be okay, guys, right? I've had that experience where I literally, looked at my friend and I was like, look, like, Azina, we're going to die and it's going to be fucking sick. Like, I cannot wait until we die because it's going to be so cool. I'm so excited. Right. Have you done psychedelics?
Yeah, I tried psilocybin a handful of times, not
Mm-hmm.
large doses, not like a hero dose or anything like that.
Yeah, fuck that.
Microdosed. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Big fuck no. But yeah, I did microdoses. And for me, I never had any hallucinations or anything like that. For me, it really just, my body felt good. I didn't experience any pain. And it felt like my brain worked better. Like things that I felt like were broken or not wired correctly, I felt like resolved themselves.
Mm-hmm. What about your PTSD? How did you get over your PTSD?
Lots of self-reflection and
Mm-hmm.
meditation. And, like I had to get to I had to go in me, right? The only way out is in.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some things that I needed to correct in myself. Like I was actually being interviewed for another podcast earlier today, and I was talking about the same concept. Was one of the things I had to let go of was I was so mad about Afghanistan. I blamed everybody. I blamed the government. I blamed the army. I blamed the Afghani people. I blamed civilians. I'm like, fuck you. You didn't even go. Like, I had to go protect our country, and you don't even appreciate it. You're over here, burning flags and breaking shit and being a hoodlum. I'm like, this sucks. Like, why did I even do that? And then with enough self-reflection, I made the decision to join the army.
Mm-hmm.
I made the decision to be in a job where I could have gone to Afghanistan and be in danger. I made the decision to serve my country regardless of how anybody else viewed it or wanted to see it. I joined and did all of those things, me, right? Even if I'm pretending, even if it was my ego, I still chose. That is the one part that is above, right? We have the ego, but the one thing, this is the ego. It's like being asleep at the wheel, right? Somebody's still got to drive the car, even if it's not you. And when you guys drive in the car, you're still making choices. You're just not aware of the choices you're making. You can't comprehend the problems that it could cause later on. Like for me, being in the military, right? I was so driven, patriotic, and do my duty that I didn't realize that it would cause me problems later on. But the only way that I could learn from that is to do it. So it all is purpose, right? It's this concept, and I'd like to put it in a really fun, beautiful way, right? Imagine a bowl, and then you pour cereal in the bowl, right? And then you pour milk into the cereal, and you're eating with a spoon, right? Well, the bowl is God. The cereal is God. The milk in your spoon is God. And it's all God serving God, right? That word God is not, it's not appealing to everybody, but stop making God into a person. Stop imagining that God is a person floating in the sky. To everything is God. You're God. I'm God. The cereal is God. The milk is God. And it's all serving itself. It's all serving each other for one better purpose. This beautiful creation that we are, even as flawed and as painful as it is to exist, it is beautiful. There is experience to be gained from this experience. And it's all serving each other, right? Even me getting blown up in Afghanistan brought me to here. Every negative experience I ever had brought me right here, right now, talking to you.
Totally. Even, the people before you, all of the people who fucked up, who killed Jeffrey Dahmer, made it so you could be alive today,
That's right.
Yeah. I think the concept of everything being random and we're just a rock and floating through a vacuum, we're monkey meat bags and nothing matters and there's no point to this at all, blah blah blah. Like, that concept to me personally is so much more fucking bizarre than God, Buddha, Satan, whoever's in control, creating this for a purpose, and everything is connected and everything happens for a reason, like a giant spider web somehow. And that makes more sense to me than the first one.
Right. Yeah. And it's we make it way more complicated than it needs to be, right? Part of the complication is people thinking that God is some old white dude like Santa Claus in the sky granting wishes, right? That shit ain't happening like that. That's not how it is. And then purpose, right? Everything having purpose, like you said, nothing happening for no reason. Now, when a spider makes a web, right, does that purpose mean that it affects us in some way, shape, or form? No. Maybe the purpose is that the spider just wanted to build a web to catch a fly to eat it. Is that not enough purpose? Does it have to be more than that?
You're totally right. Yeah. You're totally right. Did I interrupt you?
No, you're good. No, I was just going to say it's projection, right? We want it to be more than that.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure this is the same thing as projection. It's like as humans, we love to inject ourselves into whatever it is. The spider web being made for us, right? Earth being made for us. What if Earth was made for the fucking toucans, right? And then we took over and the toucans are pissed and they've been plotting to take over the world for the last, 10,000 years, right? Maybe God created toucans and we came out of nowhere and he was like, what the fuck? Who are these people? What are they doing here? Just us as humans, we just love to inject ourselves into everything because we are selfish. That's the number one problem, is selfishness and greed, in my opinion, at least. If somehow we can eliminate selfishness and greed and be able to look at, like, there's people outside my office right now, right, and they're cleaning the shampoo carpet, right, someone that is full of ego, they're gonna look at them and be like, oh, I'm better than them, I have a job that's better than their job, blah 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 blah. But when we take that away, that selfishness, that greed, that insecurity is a better word, that insecurity of it, and I just see them as real people, I think that will be when humanity gets on the right path, and we just see each other as just together. to quote like Morgan Freeman, it's like Morgan Freeman was talking on this interview one time. He was like, "Why is there a Black History Month? Right? Why do Black people have to have a History Month? Why is there not a Jewish History Month? Why is there not a Chinese American History Month? You calling me a black man is separating you from me. You are being racist by not trying to be racist, right? You're calling me a black man, an African. You're creating separation. That's what he was saying. Maybe not racist. Maybe I shouldn't say that. But you are creating separation by trying to not create separation. So instead of calling me an African American man, just call me Morgan Freeman. Just call me Jacob, because that's who we are. We're just humans. There is no difference between you and me, other than you got a sick beard and I don't.
Thank you. But you're right. I couldn't have even said it better if I wanted to.
Thanks, Don.
You want to talk about a future that we can have that is beautiful, a life worth living. What you just said is the key. Mm-hmm. Now the question is, how do we get there?
That's a good question.
Unfortunately, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen from everybody in the world interviewing me. It's not going to happen from me going on the Joe Rogan podcast and speaking my wisdom. It's going to come from people realizing that what we've been doing is a mistake. It's going to come from people realizing that instead of destroying the earth and destroying each other, that we are actually here to be shepherds of this planet and to take care of it and to take care of each other. But here's the thing. If we were perfect, if we were really made perfect, we would already be doing that. So the only other alternative is that we weren't intended to be perfect to begin with. We were intended to learn how to become perfect. Mm-hmm. Every mistake we've ever made, macrocosm, microcosm being the small picture. Every mistake I made in my life led me to this better, bigger version of me. Macrocosm, big picture, the world is going to have to continue to make mistakes until it learns from them and learns how to be perfect.
Mm-hmm. True. And you're totally right. Life would be so boring, if we were just all, it goes back to, I don't know if you can relate to this because you're a bit older than me, but you might be able to. But, when I was a kid, my mom, I would always get so mad at the video games I was playing. I love Mario. I love Mario since I was a young kid. I'd always be playing Mario. And I would keep dying and I would get super mad. I would start throwing my controller, getting all huffy and puffy. And my mom would be like, if you don't like it, then stop playing, and then, exactly that. But ignore that. The thing that matters more than that is, it's a challenge. It's supposed to be fun because it's a challenge, right? If it wasn't a challenge, there'd be no point in doing it. It's not fun. What's the fun in Easy Street? There's no point without the challenge. That's what she was getting at, And that's true about life, It's a related thing to this is the yin and yang symbol, and you might have heard of this analogy before. It's like the true meaning behind the yin and yang symbol is not kung fu. It's one side is black and one side is white, and when you take away one of those colors, it's just nothing. There's no point to it. It's just an empty circle, because darkness and lightness can have to coexist with each other for both of them to exist, not just one on its own.
Yes. You're on your way to being a philosopher, my friend.
Thanks, dog. Everything I say, I totally just hear it from someone else and I just regurgitate it. I'm going to be 100%. The only thing I've ever thought of that's like my own thought, I would say, is this question that I'll ask you is how can we say that the right of life is the pursuit of happiness, when what if in a scenario where someone wants to kill me and that will truly make them happy? Who am I to step in the way of them murdering me because that will make them happy, right? Does that make sense?
Yes. And the only thing that is reasonable to answer that is, who says you have a choice?
I like that. Who says you have a choice? That's so true. It isn't.
And think about this, right? Think about how many people find God in prison.
Mm-hmm.
right? So it takes that catalyst, right? Doing something immensely terrible, murdering somebody, going to prison, and dealing with the trauma that is being a prisoner in prison. But somehow, in all of that trauma, in that pain and suffering, they find God. Now, some might argue that it might not be genuine, right? Like some people find God because they're afraid of going to hell or whatever. But my point is that some people it is genuine. And for me, in my case, right, I didn't hurt anybody or go to prison, but I had some pretty significant fucked up shit happen to me that led me back to this place, right? I was the most unreligious person you could imagine. I did not
Mm-hmm.
believe in God. There was nothing that could change my mind. And here I am talking to you now,
Mm-hmm.
proclaiming myself to be a philosopher and a spiritual teacher, because I clearly had some experiences that made me realize that that was the answer.
Yeah. No, I like I said, you're killing it. I think you should become a philosopher teacher. No, I don't know. I don't like the philosopher teacher because like you're kind of just like you got to be that history teacher, right? That teaches history, right? Because like okay, we have to do World War II, right? We have to do this, we have to do that. With philosophy, you have to do okay, let's do Alan Watts, and then blah 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 blah, right? Like that's boring. You gotta it's boring to have that structure. So leave that structure to history, but then you can be that cool history teacher that's like, let me lay some knowledge on you kids, right? Let me tell you guys like what's real about life. That's what you got to become, in my opinion, at least.
I like history. I love
Mhm.
history. There's lots of things, but the problem is that the version of history I want to teach is not what would be acceptable in is academia. What I like
Mhm.
about religious studies is I love all of the things I've done a lot of studying into Buddhism and Zen and Hinduism and even Christianity. I'll tell you,
Mhm.
my boy Jesus, he's got some very good things to say, and you'd be surprised at how many of the things he says parallel to
Oh yeah.
Hinduism or to Buddhism.
Yeah, totally.
That's what I want to teach. I want to
Mhm.
show people. I don't want to teach the different religions. I want to show how similar they are, not to take anything away from anyone, but to help them have something special, truly special, and to not hate each other because of what their differences think are real.
Oh, dude, you have to do that. Scratch everything I said. That is exactly what you have to do because that's so true. We need to do that. You're so right. It goes back to what I was saying about like getting rid of what Morgan Freeman said, getting rid of like the separation, right? Oh, I'm Christian. I can't talk to you nasty Satanists, but for my podcast listeners, I'm gonna be having some Satanists come on soon, and like some of them like don't even like I don't know. I guess I haven't interviewed them, so I can't really say anything because I don't really know. But like a Luciferian, right? I interviewed a Luciferian, which is different from a Satanist, but a Luciferian doesn't even believe in Satan. Right? He doesn't even believe in God. He doesn't even, at least just his own, his own specific religion for him. He doesn't believe in any of that shit. Right? He has his own beliefs. But like, for someone as a diehard Christian holding the cross in their hand, it's like they're gonna hear that word Luciferian and be like, oh my god, I don't even want to be repulsed because they're not willing to open up their minds, separate themselves from their ego, and see this person as not separated from them, see them as just another human, and hear what they have to say.
Yeah, I mean, the irony of that is the hypocritism, right? Like they're judging, but
Mm-hmm.
isn't that the one thing that Jesus told people not to do? Don't judge
Yeah,
people.
totally, 100%. Yeah.
Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone is a sinner, right? That's the point. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
is doing whatever they think they need to do to survive because, as Jesus said when he was being nailed to the cross, here's an interesting parallel to this. What did Jesus say when he was being nailed to the cross, when those Roman soldiers were nailing him to the cross? Do you know?
I have never read the Bible. I don't know.
It's okay.
I've only
It's
been to
okay.
church like 3 times.
He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Uh huh.
What is he saying there? He's saying, forgive these people because they don't know what they're doing. They're following orders, right? They're following orders blindly. They don't know that they're hurting somebody. They don't know. Much like me, right? When I was doing my shit as a soldier, I was just
Yeah.
following orders. I was just doing what people told me to do. I wasn't thinking. I wasn't using my own mind, my own free will. If somebody gave me a hammer and nail now and they said, nail this dude to the cross, I'd be like, fuck you. Nail yourself to a cross, motherfucker.
Yeah.
I wouldn't listen to them because I can think for myself. But people who can't think for themselves, they're just nailing people to the cross. And
Oh, you're totally right. That is definitely, yeah, that's a huge problem with our society, especially with these fucking things right here. Especially with these.
Yes.
Oh man, that's a whole nother hour topic. If you want to, I mean, we can. Um, I got plenty of time. No worries. Uh, but yeah, that is a huge problem with our society. Our society is, you know, just like you said, just blindly following orders. Not even thinking, okay, hey, wait a second, maybe this is not true. You know.
Yes.
Well, I guess let me ask you my podcast questions. I think this is a good segue into that. So
Okay.
my first podcast question is, why are we born and what's before birth?
Well, we talked about this a little bit before.
Mm-hmm.
Birth implies that there's something before that,
Mm-hmm.
right? This concept again of how can you have something from nothing?
Mm-hmm.
What is birth? What is death? If there's no beginning and no end, you want the answer, look at a tree. What does a tree do?
It
The leaves
grows.
come,
Yeah.
the leaves go, but it's there. It stays there. It's just the leaves that are coming and going,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still alive. It's still always there. There's no way to answer that, because that would be a question that you would try to answer from like the 12th dimension or something, somewhere where there's answers. There's no answers here.
Uh-huh.
You want to know your purpose. You want to know why you exist. You exist to exist. Your
Yeah.
purpose is to live.
Yeah. Totally. So with that then, how come we're given birth, we're given life, and all it leads to is death, and what's after death?
Same as before.
Uh-huh.
Is there to begin as beginning and an end? Does it really end? Does death mean the end? It's just part of a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And who says death is a bad thing? It's perfectly safe to die. Sometimes don't you want to? Don't
Mm-hmm.
you wish that you didn't have to keep doing stuff all the time? Groundhog day of existence. Wouldn't it be easier sometimes if you didn't have to do that?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Maybe it's not that bad.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. Um, that wasn't even dark, that wasn't even like, that was true. That was just straight facts. Um, so then with that, we've pretty much answered this question. But I just got to say them just to hear your response, is what's the point of the stuff in between birth and death?
Mm. Okay. I'd like to answer that differently than the way I've been answering these questions.
Okay.
It requires me to ask a question, if that's okay.
I would love it. I would love it.
Okay. What makes you happy?
What makes me happy? That's a very
What do you
interesting
love?
question. Well,
It could be anything.
uh-huh. I'm trying to think of something that I truly, truly, without a doubt in my mind, love. Because I like to paint. And I like I would say, like, I love to paint and I love to do my podcast. But do I love doing my, like, paint has its struggles. Podcast, I hate editing. Editing's boring, right? So I can't really say if I truly, truly love those things. I would say what I absolutely love, and this is such a cliche question, is I love to learn. Like, I love hearing people's perspectives. I love learning people's perspectives, I guess I would say.
What do you hate?
I hate is a very strong word. I always, like, not like actually, but like I slap myself on the wrist whenever I say I hate something, because that's a very strong word in my opinion, I think. Uh I would say the thing at the top of my head, which is true, that I absolutely hate is I hate seeing human beings that aren't conscious. Like today at my work, okay? Perfect question to ask is at my work, this fucking old guy, there's I work at a restaurant. There's three trash cans, very noticeable in the dining room. And this man gets up, he grabs his trash, and he puts it on our front counter while everyone's busy doing something, and he just walks away. Doesn't say, "Hey, I don't know where the trash cans are," or he doesn't even say, "Hey, here's my trash." He just leaves. Like that's just like he's just like to me in my opinion, like I look at those people, it's like you are not a conscious human being. So to long answer shortened, I hate seeing people who have uh no sense of compassion, I guess is a good way of saying that.
And what makes you sad?
What makes me sad? A painting I haven't done that I really, really want to do is a kid sitting alone on his birthday. That's always been something that makes me super sad is seeing a kid alone on his birthday. But the thing that makes me truly sad is seeing someone's life being taken away before it, as far as we know, before it even started. Like, as of recording this, the Gabby girl. Did you hear about the Gabby story? Like that's
Yes.
heartbreaking. That truly destroys my heart. It makes me super sad because her life just begun and it's already over. That's what makes me truly sad. Same thing to
All
sorry to interrupt you, but same thing with like the Holocaust, right? All those people's lives were
yes.
just interrupted out of nowhere. I guess what to a better way of saying it is what makes me truly sad is seeing people's lives not be able to unravel with their full potential, being cut off by cancer, the Holocaust, a crazy boyfriend, whatever it is, someone's life being cut off before it could reach its potential.
All of that stuff. That's what's in between.
I love it.
That's what your life is made of.
I love it. That was great. That was a good way of saying it. I love it.
It's the only thing that matters.
hmm I love that. I gotta let that sit in for a little bit. That was good. That was good. Um, that was good, man. Making me smile. I love when I have a good interview with someone. Like this is a great interview. Um,
Good. I'm glad.
my next question is, what do you think deja vu is?
Probably experiencing something you've already seen before
hmm
in
Totally.
this life or another.
I totally agree. Or my opinion on deja vu is that I think that it's universe, God, Satan, Buddha, whatever, giving you signs that you're either doing something right or wrong. Because I've had very positive deja vu and I've had very negative deja vu. In both those scenarios, I looked at I was like it, like you said with your meditation story, it's almost like I can't describe to you what, you know, this is another topic that I'd love to talk about too, is the thoughts that were injected into me. Because when you really sit down and think about it, you don't come up with thoughts, right? Thoughts, like you aren't given thoughts, or you don't look through your catalog of thoughts and like, okay, I'm gonna think this. It's just given to you. It's just put into you. And uh basically I think deja vu is whatever the creation is telling you you're doing something right or wrong. But I want to hear your opinion on this. What do you think thoughts are?
Mm, excellent question. Thoughts are imaginary.
Mm-hmm.
It's your heart beats because your heart beats. Your mind, not your brain. This is a problem that people have. People assume that the brain means the mind. Not
Mm-mm.
the case. Where's your mind? Point to it. Show me where it is.
Well, it's
How,
right here, right?
I, is it? And where do you know
Yeah.
your thoughts are presumably in your head?
Yeah.
Are they?
Yeah.
And when you have thoughts, what are they? Right?
Hmm.
This is the problem. The same thing is true about your body. You are not your body, just like you're not your mind. You are the observer of both of those things. You observe that you have a body. You're
Hmm.
observing all of this out of your eyeballs. You're observing and listening to the words coming out of my mouth into your ears that you're presumably having. Just like when you have a thought, maybe you think, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. It's imaginary. The only
Hmm.
thing that clings to that is the person observing it. So as long as you're observing your thoughts and you're clinging to them, in Buddhism we call it attachment. When you become attached to that, that's what your personality becomes, right? Again, when I went to Buddha, what you think you become, that's because it's true. If you whatever you think, that becomes reality for you. Your thoughts are no more than your heart beating.
I like that. I like that. To me, I think thoughts are somewhat of angels and demons almost that we have, that that cartoonish thing that we've seen so many times of the devil and the angel, truly being, negative thoughts yelling in one ear, positive thoughts yelling in the other ear. But like you said, it's whatever you should totally become a religious whatever you said it was. Sorry to be rude like that. Because it's true. There's so many like concepts in all of religion, but they all like are the same thing. So what you said with attachment is what I've said on the podcast before is the positive wolf and the negative wolf, right? Do you know what I'm talking about with the Native American culture? There's a positive
Hmm.
wolf. Like there's two wolves inside you, or in Asian culture, there's two dragons inside of you. And whatever dragon you feed, that's the dragon you become. So if you're constantly
Hmm.
feeding the negative devil with negative, thoughts, that's the negative thing you become, or positive, the positive thing you become. And like
Yes.
you said, that's what attachment is. It's literally the same thing, just in different
Same thing.
Yeah.
You got it, man.
Word. So, since we were talking about ghosts, or since we're talking about, uh, or since I was talking about it, right? That leads to my next question: is do you have any alien or ghost stories?
Yeah, man. I saw a UFO multiple times. I saw one when I
Okay.
was a kid with my dad. We were at a drive-in movie theater, and
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really interested in the movie, and I just happened to look up, and there were these like seven glowing like balls of light, and they were in like a V shape, like this. And they were
Yeah.
just hovering there. I was like, "Holy shit!" And I was like trying to get my dad to like look up, but for whatever reason, it was so bizarre how it happened. He just wouldn't look up. He just wouldn't stop watching the movie, and I felt like I was by myself, like I'm in this whole area full of people. And it wasn't like it was way far up there. I mean, it was like right over our heads, but I'm like the only one paying attention to it. And I look up again, then they start moving and making weird patterns and shapes. And I'm like, dude, dad, you got to look up this thing. And he just
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't. And then it went back into a V shape and then just like that, with a blink of an eye, just gone. Just, no sound, no
Yeah.
propulsion that you could see, but just gone. And then when I was in Afghanistan, me and my squad, we saw some weird shit out there. I mean, who knows? You know what I mean? Like, who knows what
Yeah.
technology is being tested over there? So who knows if it's aliens or just government projects being used? But we saw some crazy shit out there too.
Maybe when you were a kid, that was the simulation breaking, right? The matrix
Could
cracking
have been.
a little bit. I like to think that. I like to think sometimes the simulation's cracking. I actually have a memory like that, and whatever, it's the simulation or my brain fucking up. I was a kid and I was sitting in my living room watching like Tom and Jerry or something, and I wanted to I had to ask my brother something, so I no, I think something was done, right? And we had to go get up, and I was watching Tom and Jerry, and I turned around and looked at the chair behind me where my brother always sits, and he was there. And then just like that, he's like 5 inches away, standing up and walking. Like totally like he lagged, right? Like how you like lag in a video game.
Wow.
It's exactly what he
Yeah.
did. And I was like, what the fuck? And I was like totally just like tripped out
Yo,
by that.
that's wild.
That was totally
I've
weird.
had I've had experiences like that too. Like when I kind of was going through this like spiritual awakening, um, I found it was so weird. It was like something in me was magnetized, and people just
Hmm.
kind of like weird random people I never met just started coming up to me and talking to me and just saying absolutely bizarre shit. And it happened a bunch of times at my work where like this one person came up to me, and I swear what they said was just absolute gibberish. Like they said a complete sentence to me and I'm trying to listen, but it doesn't make any sense. I'm like, that's not English. Like, and it
Yeah.
wasn't another language. It was just like, it was like broken English. Like, I don't know. And maybe they were on drugs or something, but it didn't look like that. It just, I was like, can you say that again? And they did, they said it again. And it was still just as messed up as the first time they said it. And I was just like, wow, that is so weird. And
Yeah.
I
Well,
thinking, I'm like,
uh,
man, am I hallucinating? What is that?
yeah. Well, that is a common thing to happen with psychedelics is when someone tries to talk to you, it's totally just like garble, just because I don't know, it's just like, our brains aren't as, our heart can fuck up, our feet can fuck up, our lungs can fuck up. Why can't our brain fuck up like that? Our
Yeah.
perception of reality is through our brain as far as we're told, as you would say,
Mhm.
as far as we've
Yes.
been told, so it makes sense that our brain can fuck up like that. But it's still interesting. It's still weird. It's still wacky. What about ghost stories? You got any ghost stories?
Um, yeah, I got a weird one from Afghanistan. My roommate, he was just kind of a dark individual anyway, so I think that he probably attracted that kind of negative energy.
Mm-hmm.
But he kept asking me like a couple days in a row. He's like, "Hey man, have you been knocking at my door at 7 in the morning?" I'm like, "No." But he wouldn't say anything. And so eventually I just asked him, I'm like, "Why do you keep asking me that?" He's like, "Man," he's like, "every morning at 7 in the morning, somebody's been knocking on my door. And when I go to open the door, there's nobody there." And I was like, "That's bizarre." And then he just like casually throws in, he's like, "Yeah." And then, a couple nights I've been seeing this like shadow figure standing at the foot of my bed at night. And I'm like, "Oh, okay.
Oh shit.
All right, dude. That's crazy. Like, that's crazy." And I was in his room when we were cleaning our weapons one time, and something that was on his shelf, like right up here, we're just cleaning our weapons, and all of a sudden, just shit started come flying off his shelf, and
Mm-hmm.
I got up and left. I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, that happens all the time." And I was like, "What do you mean that happens all the time?" And then so I'm like, all right, now I'm really tripped out. So I get up early the next morning. I'm sitting in my bed and I'm like looking at a watch, waiting for 7 o'clock to roll around. And as I'm walking to my door to open the door at 7, I hear a knock.
Mm-hmm.
And I open my door at the same time as he's opening his door. And he goes, "You heard it too, didn't you?" And I was like, "Yes." But that was it. Never
That's
caught anything or saw
crazy.
anything. But yeah, war zones probably have lots of like negative energy, because I think that's what we're talking about. It's energy.
Mm-hmm.
When you die, I think that leaves negative energy, like residue almost, and it probably has an effect on shit. I can't explain it, but it's what I imagine it is.
No, you're totally right. Because like when we die, our body decomposes. Let's imagine our consciousness, our soul goes somewhere. But what about our thoughts? The things that we don't think of, right? The things that just appear in our heads. Where do those go? Because I imagine when we die, our spirit is separated from our thoughts, and I imagine when we die, it's instantly just like, oh man, like that was a good run, like, oh, all right, this time let's take it back to New York 1920. I think I'm gonna live there during that time, right? We know, like, I know everything about the universe. That's how I imagine it is when we die. We just go back to what it was like before we were born. But our thoughts and our energy, right, still affect the time period and the place we live in now. So I think that could be, the negativity of our actions and our thoughts, like you said, residue in that specific space for, however long that is, eternity or 10,000 seconds or years.
Who knows?
Who knows? We already talked about my next question is always, do you believe in karma? But we already talked about that. And so my my last question is, do you have any advice you'd like to give to anyone through all the stuff you've been through?
Yes. Yes, I would.
Let's hear it.
For everybody right now, everything we talked about is relevant. It is good. Make of it what you will. But the only thing that really truly matters is that you enjoy this life. Enjoy the good, enjoy the bad, everything in between. Enjoyment of this life is the only purpose you have. Doesn't matter if you're a lawyer or a cowboy in space, just enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to eat some cherry pie, eat some cherry pie. Because I promise you, the one thing that is for sure is that you will die. Even if you come back, it won't be the same way that you're experiencing this life. You might not even come back as another person. You might come back as like a fucking gecko or something, right? So don't waste it. Don't waste. This is precious. Anything that you are hanging on to, any of the anger that you're hanging on to, or anybody that you're mad at, forgive them.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I was talking about earlier, forgive them for they know not what they do. Mm-hmm. Everyone is just trying to survive and just trying to get through this life. And in my book, this is actually my book right here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say the very last thing. And I say, but before we can change the world, we must first change ourselves.
Totally. That's 100% true. I love it. Would you like to plug anything? You kind of just plugged your book, but you can go into more depth in your book. I'd like to hear about your book. So what's your book about?
It's everything, basically in a nutshell, everything we've talked about. Mm-hmm. This is a Caveman, a Philosopher. I kept it short. It's only 110 pages because I wanted everybody to be able to read it. But the first half of the book is my life, my experiences, my traumas. And then the second half of the book is how I managed it, how I got out of it, learning about Buddhism and all of the religions, learning about meditation, having that wild experience I told you about. And I just try to give people, it's kind of like in the, back to the movie, The Matrix, right? The red and the blue pill. Mine's not the entire red pill. It's more like of a baby Advil red pill. It's just a little piece of the puzzle that you can have that'll help you kind of jog that process. But yeah, if anybody wants to get that book, just email me at hermitradio@gmail.com. That's a connection to my podcast. And if you want to listen to my podcast, you can go to my website, which is hermitcast.com. And you can find my podcasts and my information there. And if you want the book, I'm giving them away for free. I'm not selling them. So if you want one, just email me and I'll send you one.
I like that. Why aren't you selling them?
Because I probably will write more books and I will probably sell those. But for this one, I just wanted to do my part to encourage that little bit of good that's in people. Everybody's got it, right? The wolf, the good wolf. This book, positive wolf, the one that wants to change, the one that wants to be enlightened, the philosopher, spiritual guru that's inside you. This is to feed that. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't put a price on that.
Totally. Yeah, there's a little like super, it's like a vegan organic restaurant. I was talking to the lady in my town and she's like, yeah, I barely make shit off this place. Because it's like I want people to have a healthy, cheap option. And like her profit margin is just enough for her to get by. And I love that. We need more of that non-selfishness, right? Like we got all these nuclear warheads, but we don't have one aimed at greed and selfishness.
That's right.
Well, Cameron, is there anything you'd like to talk about? You'd like to ask or say or share?
I think we covered it all, my friend.
I think
so. But we can do it again anytime you want.
I'd love to. This was a great talk. This is definitely, sorry everyone before, but this is definitely one of my favorites. Well, I've taken enough of your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Like I said, anytime.
Thank you for listening to my podcast. Down below in the description will be a link to all my social media accounts where you can get news, interact with me, and enjoy my art. But more importantly is a link to my Discord server, Facebook group, and subreddit. These will be discussion boards where we'll talk about the podcast and all the stories we hear on each episode. But more importantly is I want to hear your story, your thoughts, your perspectives on what you think life is. All the questions I ask, I want to know your answers. And have conversations with you and anyone that needs to talk about something or just wants to talk to someone. Because at the end of the day, no matter how much hate we feel towards someone or something, we were all born and we will all die. But for right now, we're stuck in the in-between.